welcome back to the 2018 HGC Finals here at the Blizzard Arena. It's been an incredible day so far, and the 2-0 streaks continue. As we just saw Team Liquid take a 2-0 victory over Luna Meow from Taiwan, a much-needed victory for them. They must be feeling a lot better going deeper into this group stage. We also saw a 2-0 victory by Heroes Hearth Esports over Mind Freak. That was done off-stream, so congrats to them on the 3 points that they pick up. That's right, way to go, guys. All right, up next, we get another look at GenG, #1 seed from Korea up against Tempo Storm, North America's 2nd seed. And I gotta say, after those interviews that we had with the teams, this could be an exciting match. We could be seeing some interesting picks here. To take us through all the action, let's throw it over to Gillyweed and our analysts to take it over.
Sounds like we got some NA fans in the audience. You guys like NA?
That's cheating.
Who would have thought? I've got a couple of friends up here with me. Caldor, of course, not at all happy about what we just had. And then Dreadnought, too. Caldor, though, let's talk about Team Liquid, who you are a fan of, and how they're feeling after Luna Meow.
Surprisingly okay. Like, I talked to them a bit, and they were still in high spirits. They were able to joke about the loss against Miracle.
Sure.
And just, like, analyze pretty quickly what went wrong, where they felt they could have taken the map. They are disappointed, don't get me wrong. They wanted to take at least one of the 2 maps, but at least the performance against Luna Meow made up for a lot of it. So they're pretty okay with the situation, even though, of course, they would have rather won one of the 2 maps.
Right, it would have been great to keep Miracle from getting the 3 full points and then also be able to get another one there. But still, being able to get 3 points is really good for them heading into future days. Dreadnought, Heroes Hearth, Kevin mentioned, got a win over Mind Freak, their first win. Was that a lot like Tempo Storm versus Luna Meow, super dominant, or something different?
From what I was able to tune into, it did feel like it was a more slow and controlled pace coming out from Heroes Hearth Esports over Mind Freak, but it felt like there was not that much deviation, right? It's still full control from the North American team, but maybe not as lopsided as we saw from Tempo earlier against Luna Meow.
Well, a little bit of flavor from both of our NA teams shown so far, and I know we're about to see, hopefully, a little more of it. Before we get to that, let's check in with the groups and see how things are shaping out. With their wins over in Group B on the alternate stream, Team Dignitas and Heroes Hearth Esports are now sitting up at the top. Of course, Tempest, a pretty big surprise that they went 1-1 with the 1. Boy, that was a scary thing to say. But regardless, they do get a point, and we'll, I'm sure, continue to see Tempest start to get some wins of their own.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to really judge what happened there because from I didn't watch the matches, but from what I've heard, there was that Tempest just simply screwed up a little bit. They gave their opponent everything they wanted. They catered towards their play style. So whenever you talk to other teams, they immediately say like, yeah, it sounds like maybe the Koreans were a little bit too condescending there. Didn't really give them the respect that they deserved and took it too easy. I feel we're going to find out in the next few days if that's a problem for Tempest in the long run or if it's just like one of these things where you slip once and then you are just back on track.
Tempest is sometimes concerning on land, Brad. Are you worried about them?
I think it is. I think it's much like Calder said, maybe too soon to kind of have that, but I can't help but feel like that's where my brain immediately goes is, here we go, Tempest again. Looks like one of the projected, possibly even favorites for the tournament, might be able to get that underdog, upset against GenG, and suddenly we go, but you're dropping games to representatives from China, and though in the past that was a very common statement to have, China versus Korea, it's no longer.
Especially because Tempest themselves said that they wanted to make sure they were very prepared, and like you said, the 1 got everything they wanted, and that is on Sky Temple. They got double melee assassin plus Hehe's Arthas, and they went in. And we'll see if maybe that was just a fluke for them. Let's take a look at today's schedule because we have 3 more best of 2s to go on our stream. 4 more best of 2s to go because I can't do math. That's why. Oh yeah, that's right. There we go. So we do have 3 more. GenG versus Tempo Storm, Miracle, BTG, the 1 versus Leftovers. And then tomorrow, we're going to start off with Tempest versus Mind Freak. So we've got 3 left. GenG versus Tempo Storm, a rematch of a match that, though it went GenG's way at the midseason brawl, Tempo Storm really brought the fight.
Yeah, they definitely did. But for me, this is also one of the games where we are able to judge Tempo Storm a little bit better because you see the first match against Luna Meow and then the first question was, okay, was that Tempo Storm completely stepping it up? Is Luna Meow just not competitive on the stage right now? And we kind of got a bit of an answer when we saw the match against Team Liquid. It just feels that Luna Meow is now outclassed. Both of the teams that they went up against were very, very dominant. So I think now we're going to see a first real glimpse of, okay, what does Tempo Storm look like? How strong are they? I don't expect them necessarily to come out and take this entire series, but even if they lose without taking a map, just how they measure up against GenG, that alone would already tell us a lot of what we can expect at the tournament from them.
Well, let's go, because I've been ready to have this conversation with you guys all day. At the beginning of 2017, I talked to North American teams, and one of the predominant ideas was that North America still needs to find their identity. And we talked to both of the NA teams earlier this week, and both of them said that, among other things, something that is developing is the idea of innovation for North America, that maybe we will try things that other regions won't, though both teams also were able to realize that maybe they don't always understand fully why things are working, Dread.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, that's going to come to light here when it comes to the deviation in the North American meta up against GenG, and it's understanding, did they figure out the why? Because if they did, this is suddenly going to look like maybe even, adjusting the entirety of the tournament meta if Tempo Storm looks good or even great in the series. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think that is probable, but I do think it is very much a possibility, especially considering though North America's strength is the innovation, the weakness of Korea oftentimes is adaptation if they don't have enough time, and we're looking at day one of the tournament.
I would also throw another factor in here. It's a question of how much does Tempo Storm need the wins against GenG right now, because they said, hey, we are very, very happy to be in Group A. This is the easier group in our opinion. We would rather play against Miracle than against Tempest, and we want to play Liquid over Leftover, so we're exactly where we want to be. If they're happy with the second slot here, then they don't necessarily have to show everything right now against an opponent that they perceive to be stronger, and could even just suffer a loss if they say, hey, we're going to save a couple of strategies because we need to win the first round at the playoff tournament.
Well, what I want to point out, though, is yes, GenG in the past has had an issue with maybe being willing to adjust to the meta, but I feel like that first person who was highlighted is a big reason why that is not as much of an issue for GenG. Do you agree, Dread?
Yeah, I think that is definitely fair, especially considering that they have the ability to just rely on members like Noblesse as well to sit there and be like, well, I have the time, I have the effort to be able to research into these other regions, and I'm the one who's going to be that evaluator for you as an objective scale, and also removing the emotions of the players and their feel of like, well, this character had this impact. You can have that kind of emotionless, but I mean that in the most complimentary sense possible, approach to the game.
If there was any question about the impact a coach can have on a team, you need look no further than Noblesse, because he took a team that was already phenomenal and have made them titans, tyrants, almost untouchable. We're talking 21 heroes in Phase 2 that they have 100% win rate with. It is very hard to defeat them, and yet Miracle have been able to do it. Can Tempo Storm do it here?
I think they definitely have a couple of approaches towards this that could surprise GenG. I mean, you have seen, obviously they did the research. You mentioned Noblesse, like he looked at those games. But there might be something where GenG, as do most of the European teams too, ask themselves, are they really playing this year against tough opponents? Does it hold up on the international stage? Can you play it against another region outside of NA? Or do you just like tone it down a little bit, still throw maybe a double support in there or one of these offlane picks that we've seen from Tempo Storm? Or do you just go full crazy? So I want to have an answer to that, and I'm excited to see if Tempo Storm is committing to that now against GenG.
Well, two people that Tempo Storm need to be looking out for are the dynamic duo of Rich and Reset. Played together a long time ago, and then Rich talked about wanting to play with Reset again, and then bringing in Tist and Reset. That's another big reason, Dread, why GenG started to have the dominance that we've seen from them from so long.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is even more impressive considering that it almost felt like Rich came back just so he could play with a member as brilliant as Reset has been. Together, they really do set each other up to be the 1-2 punch of this squad. And part of the reason Rich is such a very big focus for any part of the world, he is a flashy player, but that is something that I think Tempo, if they're relying on any success here, that flashiness is something they have to punish. That Rich likes to overextend. When we look at Miracle's wins, the biggest misplays that existed were in the hands of Rich. He was getting punished. And so if Tempo looks at that, I think if they find a way to be able to maybe make that, R&R look less appealing, that they can maybe get a win.
I just feel that GenG also starts stepping it up when they when they get challenged a lot more. And that's one of the things that's very scary with that lineup, because oftentimes when you see a mistake, we had that in the earlier series where Rich all of a sudden with Hammer is basically running it down on one of the lanes, and you're like, yeah, he's having fun there. You know he's laughing as he's dying. So at that point, when someone challenges them, all of a sudden they become stronger and stronger and stronger and play the game to perfection and just provide fantastic series. So this is what makes this team so incredibly scary.
Well, this is an especially historic matchup because it's not only Sake and Kyocha's third BlizzCon together, but it's Cattle and June's third BlizzCon together as well. There is so much to break down, but let's get into the draft because we want to break that down. We want to get into the games. Here are the battlegrounds that we have. Tempo Storm, very consistent with what they've been. They've taken out Sky, same with GenG. I've don't know if we'll ever see them go off of the Braxis holdout ban. They really don't want to play versus anybody on that. And then finally, GenG will take us to Infernal Shrines.
It is a bit surprising, though, to see the Shrine selection out of GenG. This is not a popular battleground for them, so much so that when looking at just standardized league play, only 2-game sample size, and they were only selecting it in one of those 2. So I suddenly go, is this, again, out of some of the fear of some of the rumors from Tempo Storm? Is this just them trying to be less predictable for other people looking at them into the tournament? It raises a lot of question marks here.
Gives you at the same time also not really a big sample size of what you know about them on the battleground if you are, of course, Tempo Storm right now. So obviously, you know some of the performance there from the past, but most of these games are so long ago that you can't really validate, okay, is that still useful information for us here? So I'm really curious to see where, especially heroes like, okay, Kerrigan was the first one the name immediately banned out, but Diablo, where he, for example, lands now again.
And before this draft takes off too far, there is a specific pick on the side of Tempo Storm that I don't want to see, or at least a focus or adjustment in some way when it comes to their playstyle, and that's Glarong on squishy heroes. Kyocha has only gotten better and better in the offlane since he has made his transition to full-time within that, and I would argue he is debatably one of the more underestimated players within this roster, and the only slip-up we got out of Tempo Storm so far in their series against Luna Meow was Glau making a very high-risk clear onto a double camp on the top half, ignoring some of the other things, but we get the Malthel, we still get the double support. Tempo Storm is just bringing out the NA Classic here and saying it's enough.
Yeah, they're going straight back into what they did before, but they don't have the Kerrigan with it, and it does feel like Fan was a big enabler for what worked before with that Kerrigan, not only tanking some of what Luna Meow were throwing at them, but also setting things up, having the Divine Shield.
I mean, this is also exactly why we're here, because we are always talking within our own regions about the meta that evolves, and then you look across to North America, to Korea, and you just see completely different metas coming out there. And now we're seeing that clash, and you have that double support. And even the pick on Malthel is something that Europe, just to give one example, doesn't really value as much as North America does.
Yeah, but that's such a wasted ban, isn't it?
It is.
That's Caterpillar playing Uther, right?
It is, and so that shows a little bit of maybe confusion. It should be said that it's not out of the realm of possible, but so far, from what we know from Tempo Storm, that Garrosh ban is a waste. They do not intend currently to go into a primary warrior role. As we get the Whitemane and Blaze here out from GenG. The Kyocha on the Blaze is amazing. And one part of that matchup I was concerned about is not only the health pool of Malthel, but Kyocha counters all of GenG. Use Blaze to counter Malthel so well. Every single time he's looking for his passive to heal, triple bunker, flamethrow him to death, and just wait. They bait him into bad positions here, and I think that there was a lot of weight now on the shoulders of Glau.
Now, the entire time when we've seen, especially in the playoffs on North America, when we've seen this Uther and Tyrande composition and all the CC that comes out of it, my main question was really, okay, how does this look like when you go up against, on the international stage, a top team? And Luna Meow wasn't quite their team. It really felt like they were outclassed here. But now I'm really curious if this holds up against GenG. Because I really feel with what you are seeing here, the Blaze alone already allows you to get much better control of that. You can play around an opponent. You have great CC, good engage, and then even Hammer in the backline. It's going to be incredibly tough for Tempo Storm to get anywhere close to Hammer.
Though it ended up being that it wasn't a tank, I still think the control over all of the melees with things like Kerrigan, with things like Maiev, has put it into a position where we're seeing the Malthel with a Greymane from Fan. We've seen Greymane from Fan before. He's a very capable Greymane player, but it does feel like it doesn't pack as much of a punch, I guess, or set things up the same way. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the biggest fear that I have is when you see the Greymane Jaina pick up in this circumstance, double support has typically a lack of macro, and that's where things like Bala be able to compensate for that. Greymane is something that can make that happen.
Sure.
But normally you go, that's pretty predictable in rotations. How do we respond to that? Sergeant Hammer, if he matches the lane, wins it. If she doesn't match the lane, she just goes the other one, ends up still winning it, while a three-man defense, generally speaking, is enough here. The first Shrine phase, I feel like, is the make or break for Tempo with this comp. If you have a Greymane double all in, they have to either offlane pressure effectively and get a huge advantage, or find a way to get a kill before the 10 mark. Otherwise, I think it falls apart quick.
Another problem immediately with the Kerrigan missing in that equation is that you are lacking a lot of the engage potential that you have through Kerrigan, and then with the Divine Shield. You still have some kill potential, and you can use the Divine Shield on Greymane to get the power through. But if you want to have the engage, your only CCs in that setup are now Uther and Tyrande. You get some slows out of Jaina, but that's already about it. And if you go at a powerful hit point setup like Diablo and Blaze, it's going to be tough to take them down no matter what, even with a Greymane in the equation.
Well, we see NA Meta get its first test against the current world champion, and what better casting duo to cast Korea versus North America than Wolf and Jayhao? Take it away, guys.
it's time to put some answers to bed here because North America's meta going up against arguably the best team in the world. Wolf, I know you're a fan of this GenG team as you are with most Korean teams, but this meta is something GenG has not faced before.
They haven't faced it before. You and I were talking a lot about this during the draft itself, about how the Garrosh ban didn't really suit the narrative of what Tempo Storm was drafting, so it seems like they still haven't quite been able to figure out exactly how NA is playing at the moment. So excited to see kind of how these two drafts collide as we see kind of a tank Uther in play moving into this first map, Infernal Shrines. You know, expectations here are that it's going to take GenG a few minutes of gameplay here to really start to get a grasp on this composition. As we introduce their players, Sake on the white main, we'll have Kocha on Blaze, followed by Rich on his signature Sergeant Hammer, Reset on Raynor, and bringing in Tist as the final pick here of Diablo.
On the right side in red will be that of Tempo Storm, the North American hopefuls here, along with Heroes Hearth. It will be June on Tyrande, Ven on Jaina. Caterpillar, as you mentioned, will be on that tank Uther. Fan on Greymane. Glaurung will be on that Malthael.
I've seen a lot of iterations of different Uther play over the years, and you know, he's been reworked a few times. There was the piano build. Now you've got this tank build. Tiger used to play a more aggressive tank build, for those who remember him from the Chinese region back in the day. And you know, I myself have not had in my region any experience with this tank Uther. And I'm excited to see, you know, I'm kind of in the same shoes as GenG here, how this actually pans out with the Greymane pick.
It's going to be fun because what we'll probably see in some of this early game is try and get that camp control, some of the early camp control. You have a lot of lethal potential when you have a Greymane Jaina. Diablo's not very well stacked. Play around some of that, but then also try and get that split lane pressure with the Greymane because of the amount of siege damage he can do. Rich says, I'm on Sergeant Hammer, I can do some of my own. Van will defend for now as we get the rotation coming down from Tempo Storm.
Yep, just trying to punish Rich here. Those Rich doesn't even unsiege though. He has the understanding that with Diablo here to peel, Cattle is going to take a ton of damage, so he only unsieges when the next wave comes out here. Rich is such a confident Sergeant Hammer player because he knows he has the backup of his teammates, especially with his Diablo for peel. I mean, you saw him use Tyrael earlier today, or this team used Tyrael for that same extra protection, but in this case, the Diablo just makes it so that rotations can actually kind of be used against you when you come in.
The contention for that bottom camp is going to be interesting to me because sometimes you'll just see teams grab that early just to get some of that early lane control and then put pressure in a different lane. But with the first shrine being at the top, sometimes you'll see teams, they'll delay that pickup or they'll look to ward people off, then fight it and try and use it as an advantage. As Cattle getting bullied
this
around.
Is what I'm talking about.
Back. There's the double support healing, but it's not going to be enough. Cattle, first blood here.
That's first blood, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Notice that Rich doesn't unsiege, and when we saw that last fight, you know, or that first engage on the fight, his fan comes in and Worgen's on top of Rich, and he doesn't stick around because there's this moment where he realizes, okay, Rich is not even phased by me. I can't trade this, but there's some miscommunication on Tempo Storm. They do flank with Cattle there to try to actually get that kill, and it's the Diablo peel plus the damage and range that Sergeant Hammer has that makes it so frustrating. When you see a move like this, Sergeant Hammer just chased 3 heroes away in siege mode because Tempo Storm has to respect, okay, when Rich walks up and sieges, we don't have vision of the rest of the rotating heroes. We just have to let him be. And he's the best Sergeant Hammer player in the world. I mean, most would argue the best player in the world, generally speaking, but it's such a frustrating hero to play against when the protection is there, when the peel is there, where you're trying to rotate. You have a team that can even, or the competition that can even push a lane by yourself, but Hammer is the threat. You've got to deal with it somehow, but when you try to go in, you actually lose the trade. It's so, you know, frustrating and so aggravating to play against that slow, methodical style.
Do have a couple of talent options to maybe try and help this composition because we saw the extra range on that Q for Jaina at level 1, which requires you to essentially pick up Arcane Intellect. You got to get mana back some way. But we also have Thick Skin for Greymane, so if Fan does go in, basically gets 2 block charges, 50 physical armor against that. But right now, it's GenG pushing in this top lane with that Shaman camp, and this is Tempo Storm. They're going to look to get that split lane pressure with that Greymane. We'll see if and when GenG looks to kind of rotate down to deal with that. Glaurung right now just kind of playing with Tist a little bit, knew that he had to jump back, will buy some time for his team, but that will warrant a response because you can see right there, that bottom lane, that wall, completely gone.
Yeah, I think GenG spread themselves a little bit too thin by keeping everyone up in that top lane while, you know, grabbing the shrine itself, but Not too late of a rotation down here for Reset to deal with Cattle's mid push. We're going to see
Rich!
Yep, Rich dies here after a dive in the bot lane, but can they try to convert this into something? That fort is still up.
That's the thing about this composition, the changes to Sergeant Hammer. You saw the raw lunar flare, the unstoppable came in, but the minute you go out of siege mode, things change now. And using that physical armor that he had, he just stayed on top of that, and Worgen Form was able to get the takedown. No way to boost out of there. So the early advantage for Tempo Storm. We saw in the draft, they banned the Garrosh in the second ban. We've already covered that. The analyst did a great job of covering that. But this is also very North American style, is that, yeah, that first Punisher is nice, but it doesn't do nearly as much damage if you have this type of control. And Tempo Storm experienced that firsthand. We saw a lot of it in North America from Team Freedom, a team that was here just last year. Right now, GenG, they'll need to get a fort down in return to make this worth it.
Oh, certainly. They'd absolutely have to get the fort, and perhaps even more, because currently we still have that split push in the bottom lane from Greyman is working now on the keep wall. So this is actually really going to cost GenG big if they don't get any kills here. I mean, the fort itself is tough to get, and because Tempo was ahead in terms of rotation, they got the bot fort early, had time to come back, and then be in position to defend. So actually committing further to knocking down this fort is just not reasonable for GenG at the moment. They have to clear this wave first.
That's a 1v1 down there.
They got to leave.
That's a 1v1 down at the bottom.
Yep.
Raider versus
Graven.
Yeah, he should get that just because he has that heal plus the armor. So the minute he trades out, he moves into Worgen Form. Reset is just fine with pressing that E key, and he gets that armor, does get that return. So the experience made up for a little bit. They did not get that top fort down, so the lead still in favor of Tempo Storm when it comes to the experience.
Sure. We do see that neutral camps being taken in the bottom lane as well at the moment by Glaurung here, so he's trying to sneak away this. If Reset knew about this, obviously he would challenge, but he doesn't have vision at the moment. May check in just a second. Well, too late now. But we have to highlight, I think, that the save on that top fort is what is going to allow Tempo Storm to have a hard engage at 10. That's going to be a razor-thin window of time to actually hit. Reset is going to challenge Glaurung now. Has the Q, but it's not quite enough damage.
One thing that
has Hearth, or well, I guess he is going to have to Hearth.
Well, Fan getting back into position is in that Worgen Form. See if he goes to get disengaged. Gets right back in, but gets knocked into that wall. There's going to be the slow, the stun. That's going to be the follow-up. This is a very tanky Diablo. Curse Bullet used instantly. You can see the Scarlet Aegis used in return, but the Lightning Breath, here it comes. And right now, D-Shield onto that Greymane, trying to get the takedown. We get the takedown on Jaina. And right now, Tist somehow able to survive.
He's surviving.
Fan is committing, but they are falling apart as Tempo Storm.
They just tried to focus him down while he was in Lightning Breath, but it doesn't matter because the White Mane healing is too much. Rich arrives, does too much extra damage here, and yet again, GenG is so good at converting these rotations into their wins with the Sergeant Hammer. They put a clinic on how to do this right at the forefront of this tournament when they fought the one earlier, or excuse me, not the one, Beyond the Game earlier, just a few series ago, when they had the same hammer on Dragonshire. Once again, aggressive rotations, even the commitment to the Divine Shield, but it just isn't enough. Souls had finished right before that. They've got the White Mane healing, the Aegis to help keep everyone alive. And now GenG finally pulls ahead in experience. The fort was taken out in that top lane, and GenG is now sitting pretty in this game.
And they also took out that well. Next Shrine will be here in the mid lane. Fortunate for Tempo Storm, there's going to be not enough time for GenG to get to that 13 talent tier. See if they maybe try and force that through some other rotations. Neither team making a rotation over towards that Shaman camp just yet. We're seeing Tempo Storm on the minimap starting to go there, while GenG right now will take the Impalers here to buy some vision and lane control here over the mid lane during this Shrine.
Indeed, Tis just leading the front line here. You can get to perhaps grab Fan if he decide to overextend a little bit, but he's being safe. They have the Shrine control right now. They have positional advantage. The Divine Shield did just come off of cooldown, so there are ways to hard engage onto that back line if they can set up some poke, but it's just so difficult when Rich is pushing the boundaries of, split pushing with this hammer, or not split pushing, but forcing the wave. They're actually going to run for keep.
Yeah. So weighted experience, right? A fort is worth 1250. This keep wall, the keep towers are worth 800 each. So as long as you're not giving up much beyond that, it's still a net positive plus more control. This Punisher does it in the game. The next Punisher, if it's bottom, then you have map control. But if you
What if you die though, J-Hal? That's what I'm concerned about. Reset just face checks the bush. He knows Glaurung's likely to be in there, catches him. And they are going to finish the Shrine. Now, if we see this rotation down from Kyocha, that's when things are going to become real bad for Tempo Storm. He is going to try to head them off as he heads down through this brush. He is mounted. Nice dismount from Glaurung. If he doesn't get that dismount, it gets nasty. Perfect cleanse here as well from Uther, and that's going to be the escape here. Oh, may have spoken too soon, though. Have to use a Divine Shield to save Glaurung.
Well, Test, he lives through that. Again, the white main healing is just so much. They did take a lot of damage with the Starfall. You could see the commitment. The last right's not able to confirm the kill, but this Punisher is healthy enough. With the minions here, this requires such a response. GenG, they might just stay in that bot lane, start forcing down that bot lane, at least getting some extra damage.
Yeah, and because they forced that, the rotation came down, this stayed healthy, like you were saying. And all the while, that top camp that was pushing is actually a negative for Tempo Storm because it's now giving free soak to the top lane. Sure, getting through that fort and doing that extra damage there does help you, but you've now given safe soak to Kochit in the top lane, so you're not gaining anything from that at the moment.
Water Elemental a little late there. They wanted to get the slow onto reset to try and get the track down there. That's we saw the Curse Bullet. Curse Bullet, short enough cooldown. Water Elemental, relatively short, will be available by the time the next Shrine comes in. It's just a matter of if there's another team fight between now and then. So 1 point of interest for Tempo Storm. They're playing for the long game. They've been taking down structures. That bottom lane that they've been working on, if they win the next team fight, Wolf, and they can do it on even talent tiers, that bottom lane now exposed in the next Shrine in that bottom lane. So Tempo Storm, a little RNG on their side. But
yeah,
this is a calculated approach for them.
Certainly, and there's key potential here with this. Shrine or no, they could even look for a core call if they're able to get a team wipe here on this Shrine fight and get the Immortal. We're, looking further ahead. We're actually pushing this idea very far, but there are a lot of things you can do. It was initially for the experience why they got that wall down there, but the added benefit is that open keep. So right now, you can see they're being very aggressive. This is very Chinese. What we're seeing here really is just hiding in the brush, knowing that GenG's going, oh, okay, they're pushing top, we're going to steal this experience, so they want to bait the rotation to get a trade. When GenG does not respond, they said, well, okay, I'll take that experience.
Yeah, Sergeant Hammer, all they were doing is watching for vision. The minute Sergeant Hammer showed bottom, they're like, let's go. That was the instant moment you saw them move directly in. Again, the weighted experience there, they're going to lose the well. That does give you less control in that, but it makes up for the experience deficit because there was the threat of GenG racing in towards until they got to 16. Tisk not willing to commit just yet there as he got the dive onto the minion. But that was experience needed. But you can see when that fort goes, now we're looking at 15.5 for GenG in that race towards 16 before the next Shrine.
Well, look at Rich rotating up here. This is a really scary spot for Glaurung yet again. Rich comes in, sieges up, does sneak his way out of there as Tist had not yet rotated in. But the problem for Tempo Storm now is that the longer this goes on, if they don't get a keep, even though they got that experience, that weighted experience, they're still behind. They're behind heading towards 20. And 20 is where GenG is going to end this game because it's been a very slow passive game. They haven't been able to get any keep walls down just yet. They're working on one now, but seems like Tempo Storm will pour them away after this cannon tower comes down. But my main point here is what happens when GenG has 20 and Tempo Storm does not? They haven't been able to win a single Shrine fight, and the Punisher scales as the game goes on. So sure, you can ignore it and split push and get keep walls down in the early parts of the mid game. But as you move to the next stage, that strategy is going to become a little bit tougher to pull off.
Yeah, it's time to go. I mean, that's the thing. But with 16 here, GenG, they're going to take away the Shaman camp potentially, so they're going to move back. This could be something for Tempo Storm to play around. You saw the Cocktail go over to get vision. They're split right now. They've got to be careful, because this is everybody here for GenG. 16 talent tier advantage. I think Tempo Storm, they've got to be very cautious with how they approach this. As you can see, Glaurung checking the bush, but 16 picked up. Half second too late. Tempo Storm unable to take that fight. In the meantime, GenG's already started on that Shrine. Skiocha getting an early start here.
And it's really easy when you're playing Blaze versus Glaurung's Malthael to maintain this faster rotation because you have the wave clear, you have this quick rotation where you're not cleaning things up. And now Glaurung takes a ton of damage. Coach is going in for the engage. They have the bunker for extra safety. Divine Shield used way too early here, and that means that June, after getting that cast onto him, means that now they can't fight with a Greymane. They've wasted their biggest engage tool to heavily fight against GenG. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the big turning point. This is where GenG is going to break this game wide open. It looks like they're going to get keep very likely minimum. And if Tempo Storm messes up this fight, remember, they don't have D-Shield anymore. They can win the game right here.
It's an interesting comp. It does require them to get at least one kill to make that a reality. It's a very different thing. They don't have bunker to make up that distance, so a lot is on Tisk to get the perfect engagement here. And right now you can see Vin on one side, Cattle and team on the other, trying to get this down. Punisher down to 60%. They're trying to hold. They got to be careful. The jump's about to happen. There's going to be the flip over. Starfall in return turn will buy some time, and the Punisher about to make moves.
Scarlet Aegis allowing them to push forward here, trying to get that kill onto Cattle. He's just so tanky. He's got that extra armor, but the keep is going to go down as well as the Punisher. Everyone on Tempo Storm is low on health. Looks like they might try to look for an engage, but I just don't think they can. The arcane spinning circle is still on the ground. June nearly killed by it. Same with Ben.
Ben barely got out of there. Now they're sieging up on this. They have the Sergeant Hammer. Everybody from Tempo Storm has to hearth back. They got very low in health, very low in mana. So now they'll look to re-engage. They do know that Scarlet Aegis was used in that last fight. So see if they'll look to take a fight. Cattle walking in. Tis zoning out, keeping Rich alive. The shields just started to fall, but no core damage yet. As Reset eats a Blizzard, they'll start to walk away. GenG has to be very cautious. This is where throws happen.
And this is,
but right now, the core's starting to fall.
This is so GenG. Almost no other team will take a risk like this at this stage, but GenG will. Divine Shield just comes up. They're going to commit to it, having Fan in there, but the bunker denies most of the damage. Clourong now caught here. Sub-cleanse is not enough to save him, and Cattle pushed away here. Tough to be in position to grab a stun. Rich is working on that core. There's too much damage here. Once again, Scarlet Aegis stun comes in from Kocha, and it looks like that's going to be a kill on Cattle, or excuse me, on Fan.
That's 2-3 members down. The Ghost of Uther will heal up, but now 60% and falling. This should be GenG able to close out game number 1 here against Tempo Storm. They ended up playing for the long game, did Tempo Storm, but it came back to bite them in the end because GenG countered it. They move forward, and they take game number 1 in this 2-game series.
The Sergeant Hammer, you know, it's something that we've seen before from GenG at international tournaments. We've seen it, you know, domestically in HGC Korea, but it's something that the teams that have faced them, 2 of them now in a row, have not respected. You know, players are looking towards their mud and their comforts. Both China and now North America sticking to what they know, what they feel is the strongest right now. And GenG just looks back to the past, back to comfort. So not only do they take another win here with Sergeant Hammer, but they do it without revealing anything that they believe is the strongest in the meta right now. So Tempo Storm has shown even more. And that's great for GenG. This win alone is not just a 1 on the scoreboard, but it's just hiding strategies and going back to older strats that work well.
GenG showing that slow and steady wins the race, and they won game number 1. We're going to send it back to Gillian team to break down game number 1 for us.
Thanks, J-Hal. All right, guys, so we see a little bit more about the Grey Main. Tempo Storm for a long time has favored Grey Main when they know that they can get a lot of camp pressure or try to get structural pressure, which is what they did for a majority of the game. But then that 16 fight and that Jet Propulsion Caldor was such a setback for them.
Yeah, I mean, once they lost that fight, it was really a huge problem because you have a Hammer pushing behind the Punisher as well. Without Hammer, you can't threaten the core as much, and it forced Tempo Storm's hand. They had to go in. But I would say even before the 16 fight and the triple Jet Propulsion, the big team fight that we saw before that, where GenG nearly lost Diablo and then turns it around and kills 4 in a row, that was just amazing.
Yeah, it was a really good job coming out from them. I think the biggest problem that happened over that original skirmish was that Vin actually missed an Ice Lance onto White Mane, which was the original kill target. Once that happened, Shadow Chart came out from Diablo, White Mane makes it out, and suddenly Diablo has to be the kill target. There was a lot of other small things that happened past that point, but that was the biggest setback on that approach there from Tempo. And from then on, it was just a snowball against them thanks to the Hammer pick.
Well, there was also some struggles, I think, for Malthael in that game. Though Glaurung played really well, we know that Malthael is super strong from him. One fight, you know, trying to use Cursed Bullet, but Malthael not being able to be there means you don't have the last rites to follow up with that. I think that was the same one you mentioned. And then at another point, just blasted down by the bunker at the end.
Yeah, at the very end there, that was what I was trying to highlight. GenG does this over and over again. If you put a Malthael into a bunker matchup, they will just get into the bunker and go, you can't heal off of us. Our flamethrower out damages your low HP pool. Even if you don't die as a Malthael, you can't initiate. You either Divine Shield all in, which is never the thing you want to do as a last righted, you know, kind of Malthael. That being said, you know, Torment of Souls is not like it would justify bringing it back, but it's just a huge setback and one of those things that I think Tempo has to adjust on if they are going to beat a team as colossal as this.
One of the things that I found pretty amazing from GenG's perspective is you look at the setup that Tempo Storm runs. They have a Tyrande with a Hunter's Mark. They can go in with a Cursed Bullet. They have a Grey Mane. They can get a Divine Shield. So it's like full aggression with a burst damage from a Jaina. And Malthael with last rites to finish it off, and it's a single kill that Tempo Storm gets. Like this entire play around Diablo and Blaze shielding everyone, putting the bunker down, and then keeping them alive with White Mane was just absolutely amazing.
I mean, you need look no further than the fact that there was no cleanse even for White Mane to show you how confident GenG was in their ability to win that, and so they did. We'll see if they get the next win. We're gonna hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with Game 2.